Amarawa Hopa, thank you for joining us. We start in Los Angeles, California for the Summit of the Americas. The gathering is hosted by the United States. It invites major leaders from North, South, and Central American countries to talk about climate change, migration, and COVID-19. Most controversial this year is the guest list. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador declined his invitation by President Biden to attend the event. The Mexican leader said he turned down the offer because the U.S. did not invite leaders from Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. At a press conference, the president of Cuba, who did not get invited, spoke out.
Our America has changed. Exclusions are no longer possible. The decision of not inviting everyone is a historical setback.
On Wednesday, the White House defended its decision on the guest list, saying it does not believe dictators should be invited. Experts talked about the implications of these actions.
It's enormously important. This is an exceedingly rare moment for Latin America. For better or worse, I would say for worse, the United States doesn't consistently pay attention to Latin America, at least not at the level of the president and the Secretary of State.
The United States is hosting the Summit of the Americas this year for the first time since 1994. The event is expected to last until Friday. In Washington state, the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation are celebrating a land-back victory. The United States government took most of their land more than a century ago. Now, the Mitho Conservancy is handing over the deed to 328 acres of forest, sagebrush, and salmon spawning grounds along the Chubut River. The deal follows the return of 9,200 acres to the Colville Tribes last October. Colville Business Council Chairman Andy Joseph Jr. says his people will now be able to spend time in the place of their ancestors. The tribe has plans to work the watershed of this property as a salmon recovery, and it will also pursue habitat improvements and educational programming to benefit the surrounding region. A new exhibit is showing the Navajo Nation's tragic history and its continued resiliency. The exhibition, titled Bosque Redondo, A Place of Suffering, A Place of Survival, is decades in the making. It draws on historical documents and oral accounts. It takes the visitor on a journey back to the 1860s to tell the history of the Long Walk and the prison camp at Fort Sumner. Photographs, panels of text, and audio presentations paint a portrait of attempts by the government to wipe out the indigenous population. Manuelito Wheeler is one of the Native representatives who helped shape the exhibition. He says he hopes the exhibit helps more people understand this important story. And the exhibit is part of the permanent collection of the Bosque Redondo Memorial at Fort Sumner. Now to ICT's continued coverage of the orca named Sk'aliCh'elh-tenautthe. Vice President of Sacred Sea Raynell Morris has called for an independent health review of the whale. This came after multiple reports that the orca was sick at the Miami Seaquarium. Morris talked about her relative in a 2020 interview.
We had a ceremony out in our islands where her home is and her family is. And our ancestors told us that it was our sacred obligation to bring her home, to make her whole with her family. We will heal the Sk'aliCh'elh, heal the salmon, heal Sk'aliCh'elh-tenautthe, and that in turn will heal our people. Sk'aliCh'elh-tenautthe, all the way in Miami, sings her song from her mother, calling out for her to hear her. As a mother and as a grandmother, if anybody came and took my child, that loss, that hurt, would be there forever, even when they're brought home. It's still traumatic. She was violently captured. There were 4 orcas that died in that capture, and there were 7 that were taken. And from 1970, Sk'aliCh'elh-tenautthe is the only survivor, which is tribute to her spirit, to her mother's spirit, to everyone that prays for her to come home. We prayed with her. We carried a message from her mother that they'll be reunited soon. We apologized to her, asked for her forgiveness. That has taken so long. But to keep the fight, keep her spirit.